Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. The title of today's show is Growing Up Foreign in Japan. My guest is very, very interesting. You'll see what I mean as we get into the show and talk about his life and his experiences, and I'm just so charmed and pleased to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you. How are you feeling right now?
Just fine, thank you. Another gulp of water, now I feel better.
I'm sorry, that should be gin or vodka would help, wouldn't it?
That would have helped. One can imagine that to be that. It's clear.
Okay. And I'm a little nervous because I'm always nervous when I've got a guest for the first time. 15 years I've been doing this, but it still happens, so I accept it. And then when I announce it, it goes away. And we got your book. We better talk about it right away, first thing, that I should have had before this show, but I just read the back cover, and I'm looking forward to reading it and studying it because of what I know about you so far. But anyhow, the first part of the show will be the bio segment where we talk about who you are. By the way, I want to tell you, if I ask you a question that you don't want to answer, you can tell me get lost or forget about it.
You'll edit it out.
No, this is a one-take thing. We rarely go back to the editing room to take things out.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So be sure you don't screw up. Oh. I'm so glad to see you here.
Thank you.
And the second half of the show, we'll talk more about the book and growing up foreign in Japan. I'd be intensely curious about what it was like for you because I was in the occupation, as you know, and World War II at the end when hostilities were over, but I was still in the occupation. And I have memories of Yokohama and places like that. And it's been so long ago till you have probably better memories than I do of when I was a soldier over there.
Well, we may have crossed paths unknown to each other at that time. Because you were in Yokohama at the same time that I was.
I'll be darned.
I believe that's correct.
47, 48, 49. 27 months I was there.
Yeah, I was in Yokohama 47 through 54.
Oh my gosh. You're going to really challenge my memories. But let's go on, okay? And I'll go through the usual routine of who you are so that the viewers can know a little bit about you besides buying your book. And somehow we'll survive. For your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is that we have decided to talk about. So let's talk for a moment about how we got to know each other the first time I met you. It was at Chris Jones.
That's correct, yes.
And you were singing?
Yes. I don't very often sing in public as a soloist, but Chris Jones has in fact convinced me that I should do it.
Yes. And I was there too. She had a collection of old fogies like us singing, and she's
and
a
you
pianist.
did very well.
You think so?
I think so.
I'm going to pay you for that. How much?
We'll discuss that afterwards.
Yeah. Chris Jones, she's a voice teacher and a former opera singer and all sorts of things like that right now. She's on the east side of Portland, and she's been there for a while, and she's a delightful human being, period. And there's a lot more I can say about her because she's been on the show as a guest before, but this is about you tonight, so let's move on. And your first name is George, right?
That is correct.
Do you have a middle name?
Well, considering my ancestry is Slavic, my middle name is essentially a patronymic, which is my father's name. So my father's name was Boris, and so my middle name is Boris, though I don't use it very often.
Interesting. I'm sure you got a lot more like that for me. Patrilinear.
And therefore, my brother's middle name is Boris as well.
Oh, a cultural thing.
Yes, but we do not follow that tradition in my family, because my son's name is not George. Middle name is not George.
So, he broke the tradition. Are you mad at him? Are you mad at him for breaking the tradition?
Well, no, we named him.
So how could you be mad at him? And we have a couple of our other guests in the show who are watching us talk to each other. Your wife and your daughter.
Yes.
Will you say their names?
Well, my wife's name is Simone Sidlin, and my daughter is Natalie Ann Sidlin.
Yes.
Matier. I forgot. Sorry, Nat.
It comes with the age. I know very well.
Yeah.
And what year were you born?
I was born in 1934, which makes me.
You're just a kid. I was born in 28.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, you're an old guy. Yes.
Yeah. Now, if I were to ask your best friend, who is George? What would your best friend say? George is what?
Oh my goodness.
They would say, "Oh my goodness."
Well, for one thing, they would probably say that George is not shy.
That's what he's not. Now, what is he? Who is he?
He's a reasonably intelligent individual, friendly, outspoken, opinionated. I think that's about enough.
Okay. And you were born in what part of Japan?
I was born in Kobe, Japan.
Kobe, yes. I've been there. And I always have a trick question for my guests. I can ask it now or later. You ready for it now?
Feel free.
Okay. Why were you born?
Why? Well, I won't go into the biology.
Never mind the biology. We don't want to. This is a family show.
Yes. Well, there is a story of my father and my mother, how they met and eventually got married in Japan. But my father was born in Latvia.
Latvia.
In a town called Kreuzberg, which was a German name at the time when he was born, which is now Kruspils in Latvia. And he left under dubious circumstances from Latvia at the age of 20 during the revolutionary period at that time, and sort of traveled around the world in Europe and Japan, and finally after the end of the Russian Revolution, where he had been stationed, and I won't go too deeply into that, in the Russian Imperial Field Artillery in Vladivostok, which is the easternmost port city of Siberia. And so from there he hopped on a ship that was leaving Vladivostok to Japan, and he got onto that ship, which was the last ship out of that country, and wound up on the west coast of Japan, of the Japan Inland Sea. And there he established a business of import and export. And the reason why he went went to Japan is number one, he had friends who lived there already, and also his father-in-law at that time, because my mother was his second wife.
Mm-hmm.
Mother-in-law at that time was also living in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And so he established residence in Japan, and his business essentially consisted of import-export.
What was his citizenship in Japan?
Well, we were stateless.
Aha.
We had no citizenship because Russia as a country ceased to exist because it became part of the Soviet Union.
Yes.
Okay, and so he was not a Soviet citizen, therefore he was stateless.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, on the other hand, was born in Lithuania, in Vilnius, was now known as Vilnius.
Yes, yes.
And at a very early age, her family moved also across Russia and the Trans-Siberian Railway, and wound up in Harbin, in what was then known as Manchuria, which is now northeastern China.
We're going to need 3 hours for this show, Mr. E, because this guy is so full of marvelous stories, and I'm so old until I can appreciate what you're talking about. But anyhow, your mom and dad got together, and...
But I'm sorry, but there is another little story associated with that.
Please.
Which is, my father wound up in Japan, but my mother eventually wound up in Harbin. She grew up in Harbin. She finished school in Harbin and so forth. So
And where was Harbin?
Harbin is Manchuria, China.
Oh, yes, of course.
So she moved to Shanghai, China, because there was not much opportunity for her in Harbin. And while in Shanghai, she was convinced by a friend of hers to meet this interesting man that was coming from Japan on business to Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
And her friend said, why don't we go and meet Boris Sidlin in Shanghai? So they came to the port, and there was my mother and her friend, who introduced her to Boris Sidlin. And my father was immediately entranced by this young, attractive woman. And so, to make a long story short, it is a long story short. He essentially, when he returned to Japan from his business trip, he imported her from Shanghai to Japan, and they got married the next day.
The next day?
The next day.
Well, how many children resulted from that marriage?
2.
2. And
my older brother and me.
Where's your older brother now?
My older brother now lives outside of Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm. What's his name?
His name is Alex
Is
Boris Sidlin.
Yeah. Is he going to see this show?
He's looking forward to it.
All right. Let's continue on. Your cultural heritage. Anything significant about that the viewers would be curious about, your cultural heritage?
Well, even though my father was born in Latvia and my mother in Lithuania, we considered ourselves Russian Jews.
Uh-huh.
The population of the Baltic states, particularly Latvia and Lithuania, consisted of ethnic Latvians and Lithuanians,
Mm-hmm.
and also ethnic individuals who were essentially Russophone. They spoke Russian as opposed to Latvian and Lithuanian. And so because of that, our language, lingua franca at home was Russian. And so we considered ourselves Russian, and of course our ethnicity, our religion was Jewish.
Do you still speak Russian?
Yes, I do.
Oh, son of a gun. Say something to me in Russian, very brief.
Very briefly. Добрый вечер. Очень приятно с вами знакомиться.
And if I do that, they're going to shut the show down. So let's continue on. Thank you. A religious preference today. Do you have a religious preference nowadays?
Well, we are Jews, and we consider ourselves Jews and continue being that, and we have raised our children to be that, and they also raise their children to be that as well.
Yeah. I was a Roman Catholic kid, very conservative, altar boy and all that stuff, and I moved away from that. Now I see myself as a humanist or an atheist. Not atheist, that's a pejorative. So I don't embrace any particular religion as such. But hopefully I respect, and I think I do, and honor everyone's particular religious leanings. And your formal education, did you manage to get some education along the way with this interesting life?
Well, interestingly enough, I suppose, is the fact that having been born in Japan, my first language was Japanese because we had Japanese domestic help who took care of my brother and me. So Japanese was our first language. Russian was our second language. And one reason why we learned to speak Russian is because my parents spoke Russian when they didn't want us to understand anything.
But you listened anyhow.
So we listened, and we did understand, and we became reasonably fluent in Russian. Now the question that normally comes up is, where did you learn to speak English?
Yes.
Well, let me answer that question.
No.
Japan had several English language schools that were run by Christian missionaries of different persuasion. So we had Roman Catholic missionaries, we had Anglican missionaries, we had Methodist missionaries, all of whom taught English language schools. There were also several French convents that were Roman Catholic as well. So my brother and I went to these English language Christian missionary schools, and that's where we learned to speak English.
They didn't stamp out your Jewish cultural heritage.
No, we maintained our association with the culture and the community, the Jewish community.
Sure. Oh, yeah. You finished school in Japan or someplace else?
I graduated from St. Joseph College in Yokohama.
あ、そう。あ、そう。日本でわかりますか?
はい。
So, see, son of a gun, that's 50, 60 years since I said that. Never mind, let's keep going. What kind of work did you do in your working life? You're retired now, of course.
Yes, of course. After graduation from high school, I worked for my father. My father, being fundamentally a merchant, had a store in Yokohama, and I was his, quote, salesman, unquote. So in 1954, my parents thought it would be best if my brother and I moved to another country where they felt there was a better opportunity in terms of earning a living and social-wise as well. So in 1954 we moved from Japan to Canada. As it turns out, we have a fairly large extended family in Canada, in Montreal and Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And so we also had an extended family in Australia. So my parents decided, well, it's time to get out of here. Let's see what we can find in Australia and Canada.
You just couldn't make yourself satisfied anywhere, could you?
Well, we're still trying.
Mm-hmm.
So we did receive visas from both the Australian government and the Canadian government, and we elected to go to Canada, where we had closer relatives in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we hopped on the ship and sailed for Canada in 1954. Now, my brother went to Montreal a year earlier because he got admitted to McGill University
McGill, yes.
in Montreal, and that's where he graduated in a degree in engineering physics.
What did you take a degree in when you went to college?
I got a degree in mathematics and physics.
Oh my gosh. Makes my head hurt just thinking about it. I had a hard time with math in college anyhow. We know who your partner is, and how about children? Your one daughter here, any more?
Well, my son lives in Lake Oswego.
Lake Oswego, that's near Portland, Oregon here.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And so that's what we have in terms of our children. And my daughter has 2 sons. My son has 2 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter lives in Beaverton, also part of Metro Portland, Oregon.
Yes, yes. Your political persuasion on the political continuum, are you left or right or centrist or off the edge?
I would say left of center.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Do you have any memberships in political or social or civic organizations that the viewers would be curious about?
Not really.
Okay. How about, can you think of any persons from the past or alive today that you particularly admired or admire today or look up to? Any names come to mind for you?
Well, we moved to the Portland area in 2013, 2012.
2002.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. That's fairly recent, considering how old you are.
That's right, 2002. I got my thank you, audience, for helping me out. What was the question? We have established friendships here in
Any
Portland
persons
area.
from the past or alive today that you particularly admire to look up to? Any names come to mind of persons that you admire? Like for me, it was Jesus Christ and Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Those are people I admired. Any names come to mind for you of people you admired or admire today that are alive today?
Well, the people that I admire are those that have a close personal relationship to me, as opposed to figures such as Gandhi and Martin Luther King, whom I admire very much, but I don't have a personal connection with them, obviously.
Of course.
But I have family members that I'm very close to.
If you name one, will the others be jealous?
Well, the one individual that I'm very close to is my cousin Leo, and who lives in New York.
Uh-huh.
And he happens to be the son of my wife's sister, also born in Harbin, China.
Mother's sister.
You're a world.
What did I say?
Your wife.
Okay, erase that. It doesn't- my mother's sister,
Uh-huh.
not my wife's sister.
Yeah. Okay. Any persons from the past or alive today that you particularly disliked or dislike? You're only allowed a couple of those. You can't go into 20 or 30 of them.
Well, obviously, the one individual that comes to mind is Hitler.
Uh-huh. Yes,
The,
of course.
And he is always stands forward in his ruthlessness, how he treated the Jews, and of course he is one person whom I detest, obviously.
Of course. So do I. Yeah. What's most important nowadays to pay attention to in our country? What's most important? One or two things that you think we should pay attention to, particularly nowadays.
Well, you did not warn me in advance that you're going to be asking me this question.
Because I want to surprise you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to answer. You don't have to.
Well, I think we're having a problem politically in this country.
Yes. Yes.
And I think I don't have a solution,
Nor do I.
and not many people do, though they think they do.
Yes.
Yeah. And
One more last question before we take a break, and then we'll come and talk more about your adventures in Yokohama and things like that. Two questions. What's right with America and what's wrong with America? Which one do you want to address first?
well, why don't we emphasize the positive,
Of course.
right?
Yes?
And a lot of people prefer to be critical and emphasize the negative. They're both positive and negative
Mm-hmm.
in this country, and I would prefer to emphasize the positive.
I didn't want you to emphasize either one. I was curious about your views about either one, but it's our show, and if this is the way you want to go, let's go that way.
No, that's okay. As I said, there's positive things and negative things, and we should be, all of us living in this country, should be grateful to living in this country.
I am. I've traveled a little bit, and I have a bit of an idea what it's like to live in some other countries. And you have much more of an idea what it's like to live in other cultures and countries. So I hear where you're coming from. So let's take a break before the director yells at me, and then we'll come back and talk more about other stuff and your adventures in Japan. Shall we take a break, Mr. E? Yeah, thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for staying tuned. We're back. And for you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and whatever it is we've decided to talk about. I've been doing this for 15 years and I still bungle that standard stuff. And my guest this evening is George Sidlin, a very interesting character. We'll talk some more about his adventures in Japan and other parts of the world in the second half of the show. Now, you probably answered some of the questions I'm going to ask you now, but you gave me some questions to sort of prompt me because there's so much about you I couldn't guess where to start. And we talked about how you got to Japan. Is there anything more you want to say about how you got to Japan? You talked about your parents and how they married and like that.
Well, I got to Japan by the natural process. I was born in Japan.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And my older brother was born in China, as it turns out. That when my mother was expecting her first child, she went back to China, to Harbin, to be with her parents and her family, awaiting the birth of her first child, which was my brother. And so he was born in China, and then she returned to Japan with him.
And then you were born in Japan, of course, in Kobe.
3.5 years later in Kobe.
And your ethnicity is Russian, Jewish, Latvian, Lithuanian. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Which of those things you think make up the bigger part of your culture, your thinking, your way of looking at life?
Well, having lived in North America, and I say North America because I also lived in Canada for many years. And when we moved from Japan to Canada, we were stateless, but became Canadian citizens sometime later. So Canada had an influence on me, and of course, living in the United States later on had an influence on me. So I am, I think, a product of the North American culture, in addition to my ancestral culture that I got from my parents.
Yeah, and we talked a bit about how you learned English. Any memories or stories around your learning English in these missionary environments?
Well, one thing I can strongly attest to, and that the teachers that I had, both for English and for math and arithmetic, were the best. And they were fundamentally from the Catholic missionary schools. I think they taught us English a heck of a lot better than you find in a normal kid in the educational system today, here.
How old were you when you first started learning English about?
Probably 4 or 5, because my brother went to school. He was older than me, and so I started speaking English with him until I went to school myself. So my teachers, who are mostly American or English, until the war started, who were repatriated back to their native countries. They were the ones who influenced me the most, and still their teaching revolves in my head when I speak or write English.
So your first language then was Japanese?
That is correct.
Interesting.
Well, one question that normally pops up is, well, why didn't you go to a Japanese school?
Yes.
And the interesting thing is that most children of foreign families did not go to a Japanese school. Those that went to a Japanese school were the exception rather than the rule. And most of us went to English language schools. So as it turns out, most foreign kids living in Japan spoke 3 languages. One was Japanese, one was English, and one was their native language that they learned from their parents. So the Russians spoke Russian, the French spoke French, there were Tatars who spoke the Tatar native language, Germans spoke German, and so forth, in addition to, of course, Japanese and English.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of Portuguese living in Japan who spoke Portuguese. One of my best friends was Portuguese,
Mm-hmm.
and he and I went to St. Joseph together, and I still correspond with him. He lives in Canada right now.
Mm-hmm. Wow, how interesting. Let's talk a bit about the war years.
Okay,
War years meaning World War II.
definitely not World War One.
You moved to Canada and moved to the U.S. and marrying a childhood friend. Oh, war years, okay. The POW camp. You were in a prisoner of war camp.
I was not in a prisoner of war camp.
Okay.
The prisoner of war camp that I refer to in my book was a camp that was adjacent to the house that we lived in. So the prisoners that were in the camp were civilians from Guam who were captured on the first day of the war. It was on the other side of the date line, but the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, but they also invaded Guam on the same day.
Yes.
And so they captured a lot of American citizens living in Guam, many of whom worked for the Pan American Airways,
Yes.
because Guam was a stopping point for the
Trans-Pacific.
Clipper, the
Mm-hmm.
Pan American Clipper.
Yeah.
And so 42 of the prisoners that were captured in Guam were placed in this building next door to our house. The building used to be the private property of an American by the name of Marx. And when the war started, he was repatriated back to the States, and his property was confiscated by the Japanese government.
Mm-hmm.
And it became a convenient location for them to create a prisoner of war camp, and that's where they were.
How were you treated by the Japanese at the start of World War II?
Well, I really cannot complain too much. We were treated reasonably well. We were considered stateless,
Mm-hmm.
and we were required to have a permission to stay. Every few years we had to apply for permission to stay. We got that because we had nowhere else to go.
Of course.
So we remained in Japan. Now, of course, there were deprivations in terms of food and freedom and so forth, but we were not treated adversely in contrast to the native Japanese population.
Uh-huh.
Another interesting thing is, of course, Japan was allied with Germany during the Second World War.
Yes.
And there was a fairly large German population living in Kobe when we lived there. And there was the attempt by the German government to have the Japanese government perform the same sort of evil deeds against Jews that the Germans did.
Yes.
And from my perspective, now this may be wrong, but from my perspective, the Japanese did not perform the evil that the Germans did, because for one thing, they couldn't understand anti-Semitism. It was not part of their culture.
Uh-huh.
Ethnically, religion-wise, they could not understand anti-Semitism. And they looked upon Jews as white people. Germans were white people. Why did one group of white people persecute another group of white people? That did not make sense to them, at least from what I saw.
Sure.
In contrast to that, you have Japanese persecution of other Asian nations like China and Korea and so forth.
It's horrendous.
That they could understand, but they could not understand Germans against Jews, which was a good thing for us.
Of course.
Okay, and I write in the book some of the positive things of our relationship with the Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have enough time to go through that.
All right, then we'll move on then.
One thing, living in Kobe, there was a family living across the street from us, and there were also Russian Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And before the war, with entry of Japan into the war, Hitler had invaded Poland and Belgium and Holland and
Yes.
and
Blitzkrieg.
the family that lived across the street had close relatives living in Belgium. And at one point in 1939, a family from Belgium related to the people living across the street from us arrived in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the children of this family was a young girl who was my age. I was 5 years old. And she was 5 years old.
Uh-oh.
And you were wondering about my adventures in Japan. Okay, so
You started early.
so we became friends, and she and I used to go play together, go for walks together, and so forth. And in 1945, they lived through the war in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I won't go into that because it's a much too long a story. But in 1946, they left Japan for California. I remained in Japan until 54.
Mm-hmm.
We moved to Canada in 54, and in 1962, I was living in Montreal at that time. No, actually I was living in Ottawa at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering what to do for my summer vacation. As it turns out, I had been in touch with this family with this young girl. And by 1962, this young girl was a grown woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to visit them in 1962, and in 1962 we got married.
Uh-huh.
And she's here right now.
Really? Wonderful.
And so we've been married for 52 years now.
That's a while. Yes. Good. Okay. When we have her on later on another show in the guest, I'll ask her about you and what you're really like.
She'll have a lot of good things to say.
Yeah. You say a few words about the air raids. Were you close to where the bombs were dropped?
Yes, we were directly underneath.
Oh my gosh.
These were not the atomic bombs that I'm talking
No,
about.
of course
These
not.
are the incendiary bombs. In June 5th, 1945, there was a massive air raid on Kobe. This is the third massive air raid on Kobe.
Firebombing.
Firebombing. And there was an air raid siren that woke us up early in the morning of June 5th. We got up and went downstairs and went into this air raid shelter that my father had built. It was a very crude sort of structure. And we were in this air raid shelter when all of a sudden there was this bright flash. And there was this flame, a tongue of flame that came out of this bomb that had landed right at my mother's feet. And fortunately, the flame went in that direction as opposed to this direction, because if it went in this direction, we would all have been incinerated. But the flame went in that direction. My mother grabbed me by the hand. We hopped over the bomb and went to the front door where we had packed some emergency supplies. And my mother and I went out in the street. My father and my brother stayed behind for a while, and they dragged some provisions, and we went out into the mountains, not knowing what to do, and we watched, and we saw smoke pouring out of the windows of our house, and the flames, and of course it was all destroyed. And we lucked out, because we came out without a scratch.
And others weren't so fortunate.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So that seared a memory for you, huh?
Absolutely. The thing that revives these memories is every now and then I hear a siren, and that siren sends chills down my spine, because it reminds me of the sirens that we heard during the air raids.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that.
So sort of a PTSD reaction, even after all these years. You have a physical reaction when you hear a siren sometimes. My gosh.
Yeah.
War.
Yeah.
That's a whole other game. I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you made it to the hills, and the flame went the other way instead of the way.
Yeah.
Never mind. Enough of that. Yeah. You moved to Canada and moved to the U.S. and you married your childhood friend. You moved to Oregon. And in retirement, you're teaching at the University of Phoenix.
Well, no longer, but I taught at the University of Phoenix for 10 years.
Uh-huh.
I taught math.
Math.
Yeah.
You like math?
Yes.
I don't like you. No. I remember in my doctoral program, in the midterms, at advanced statistics, I
Oh
couldn't,
my.
I couldn't pass it, and the professor was really nice, and he had me come back and take the exam over and over again about 4 times, and finally I passed it. But he wouldn't give me the same exam. He says, "You think you're going to get away with something now?" But he had a fresh one each time. But he was like a psychologist because he was so neat, and he explained to me that there are certain things about human beings where a person like you can have an adverse reaction to the idea of math and statistics, and that's what's going on with you. So he patted me on the head, and he attaboy, and he treated me very sweetly until finally I was able to overcome that fear of numbers. So that I got, but that's another story. That's my story.
Well, you know, there's the expression, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics.
And you were a master at the latter? No.
So,
Yeah. And you finished the book.
yeah,
Let's put it up again.
it took me many years to write this book. As it turns out, a lot of people who meet me for the first time, one of the things they detect is a strange accent,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to know where you're from. And so I give them the story about my parents come from Baltic states. I was born in Japan. I speak different languages, and I have developed an accent. The accent is undefinable as far as I can tell. It's not American. It's not British, but it is something else.
Martian.
So
It's interesting for sure.
So what people then say, well, gee, that's really interesting. You should write a book. So I sat down and started writing a book. And, well, I had a job and I was writing the book. Eventually, I thought I finished. I started reading what I wrote, and it was garbage. So I threw it all away and started from scratch.
Really?
And rewrote the whole thing. By that time I was retired, and so I could therefore devote more time to writing the book.
Uh-huh.
And that's the result. It took me several years to do it. And if I were to do it again, I'll do it differently.
Uh-huh. When are you going to write your second book?
Well, I'm thinking of writing a second book. I'm writing a sequel right now. But it's nothing that is quite as exciting as living in a wartime with bombs falling on you.
I'm sure.
So I wrote about our voyage from Yokohama to Vancouver, and I thought it would take me just 2-3 pages. It's amazing the amount of stuff that comes out of your head when you start writing, and it keeps on growing and growing and growing. So I don't know.
I'm looking forward to the sequel. Now, last comment here. We got about a minute left. The senior choir. What's that about the senior choir you've got listed here?
There's the Elsie Stewart Senior Center in Beaverton.
Beaverton, Oregon, which is a suburb of Portland.
Yeah. And the senior choir consists of approximately 20 old men and women. And so I sing with them because I've been singing in choirs for many years. I enjoy singing. I'm musically inclined, let's put it that way.
Yes.
And so I sing with them, and the choir goes to various retirement nursing homes and entertains, and so that's what I do in my spare time.
That's wonderful. I can tell it gives you pleasure.
And you sing too?
I have vague memories. I used to sing fairly often when I was able to go to piano bars, But I can't drink anymore, so I can't sing anymore. So I gave it up about 60 years ago.
Oh,
Listen, we better stop now. You have a closing thought or comment for the viewers because we're going to need to wind down now. Look at that camera and tell the viewers what you want to tell them about anything.
well, this was an interesting experience for me to be interviewed by Don. If I had 3 more hours, I could probably keep on talking for 3 more hours. But enough is enough.
And too much is plenty.
So I hope you enjoyed listening to what I had to say. If you want more, contact Don.
Thanks again for coming on. You got time for a PSA or two, Mr. Director? To get my show's local broadcast schedule, go to donbaham.com, my website, and click on Present Day Activities. And I got to tell you about the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Without the ACLU, our civil liberties would be in more jeopardy than they are. They've done a marvelous job through the years of protecting our precious civil liberties in this wonderful experiment called America. To end corporate personhood, go to movetoamend.org. We've got to end corporate personhood and say that corporations are not persons and money is not speech, to get the influence of big money out of the electoral process so that our voices can be heard rather than the corporations of the super rich. And do we have anything else to say, Mr. Oh, I got to thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I enjoyed Georgia. Remember, KFC, oh, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable to you too. And you too, George. You too. And you too, nurse. Thanks again for watching. Good night. It's been a pleasure.